Ever wonder how to make highly textured mixed media art pieces like you see in the art galleries? In today's video, I'm going to create a stunning piece of art in less than 15 minutes. The key is to let your acrylic mediums do the work, and I'm going to show you how. I'm Jackie Bernardi, and welcome to my studio. Recently, I did 2 workshops inside of my community. Both workshops were on acrylic mediums. One was on fluid acrylic mediums, and the other was on heavy-bodied acrylic mediums like these. And I went through and I did a complete training on what they were, how to use them, how you might use them, and so on. But one of the things that I was doing was I was working fast with them. So I had a lot of product on my palette knife, which is what I used during that workshop. And I started laying it down on this piece of roll off paper or just scrap paper, really, just to get rid of the product. And while I was doing it, I thought it would be really fun to create a piece where I just used a lot of the mediums and just created whatever. No plan. It didn't matter which mediums I used. I didn't use all 12 in this, but I just went ahead and followed my intuition and started laying down the mediums one on top of each other, creating gaps and spaces and beautiful effects. And I wanted to share this with you. Uh, because you may have some mediums in your supplies that you've never used because you didn't know how to use them, or you didn't know what they could be mixed with or what they could work with. And so, really, what I want to show you today is that no matter what you have available to you, so long as you experiment with it and just go for it, you will likely create something very interesting. So, all I'm doing here is laying down these different heavy-bodied mediums, right? And it doesn't matter which ones I'm using for this exercise. However, I am listing what I'm using because I know you all are always very curious about what I use. But I want you to know that my focus on this is not to teach you how to use these specific mediums. It's exclusively to show you that you can do what you want and create something beautiful in a very short period of time. So all I'm doing is spreading these around with a palette knife. You could use a credit card, you could use a silicone paint shaper, a catalyst wedge, a paintbrush. It doesn't matter. Each thing will give you a little bit of a different look. Also, I don't want you to get hung up on what mediums are supposed to go together and those that aren't, because you won't know until you experiment. I just put down some pastel ground. That's literally to serve as ground for pastels. I'm not going to be using pastels today, and I'm using it in a very textured way on this particular piece. Now, that's not really the purpose of pastel ground, but it's how I'm using it today, and I'm going to be okay with the results. This here is the extra heavy matte gel, and it's so thick and luscious, and it creates this incredible texture that paint and inks just want to sink into. So I'm going to stop right here for the moment and let this dry overnight because I really can't do anything else with it while it's wet like this. I could add more compounds, but I'm just going to wait. So it's all drying now and it looks remarkably different dry than it did wet. And I'm going in with some of the Seth Apter Is Ink spray inks. And apparently those have been discontinued. So a good substitute would be something in the Tim Holtz Ranger acrylic ink line. They have, spray bottles in all sorts of colors, and you could certainly use that to get this type of effect. But I'm using the spray ink because it's so wet and it will settle into every single bit of texture on this page, and you can see that right now. So, whereas when I brought the paper back from overnight, you really couldn't see much on it because majority of these acrylic mediums dry completely clear. And that's what happened. So now that I'm spraying the ink on it, you're getting to see that glorious texture all the way through. But for me, this is not enough texture. So I let that ink dry just a little bit, and I'm going in with some more different acrylic mediums. And this is the molding paste, and molding paste is literally a compound that has enough body in it that you can shape it. Now, I have another compound, which is the extra heavy molding paste. I'm not using that here, but that you can actually shape things, which is spectacular. But what this is doing is it's just adding more texture, it's smoothing out some of the under texture, and because I have the ink underneath it, it's going to create tremendous amounts of depth in the final, product. Okay, I did actually end up using the extra heavy gel, and that's what I'm using here. I'm not using it the way that, I probably would use it if it was the only medium that I was using. I would probably use it much thicker, but I wanna show you something here. See those little stripy lines that look like chatter? That happens when your tool comes up against something that inhibits the smooth flow and it creates that chatter. There's two ways to get rid of the chatter. You can work very slowly and gently to smooth things out, or you can add more compound and just go thicker and cover it all. And you'll see in a moment that's exactly what I'm going to do because I couldn't fight the chatter. Normally, I wouldn't mind, but because I'm doing this so quickly and it is something that I hope to put up on my wall, I just wanna keep going, right? So I'm going to let that dry again. This time, I only let it dry for about 8 hours, which was enough. Everything was nice and solid, and I wanted to continue on with creating more of the depth, but without texture this time. This time I'm going to be using color to create depth, color and glaze, I should say. So these are just a couple of fluid acrylics. That's teal by Dick Blick, and the other is titanium white, which is also a golden product. And the fluid that you see there, that is airbrush medium that I just put down because I wanted to create really thin washes of color over this. And right away, you can see that the acrylic medium is taking the wash beautifully. And as I go, I'm going to lay down the color in different areas. I don't want it all to be blue. I don't want it all to be teal. I don't want it all to be white. Like I want variety and I want the colors that I use and the way that I use them to enhance what is already there, not hide. That jar that you see in the lower right, that is my homemade antiquing glaze, and how I make that is I mix Van Dyke Brown fluid acrylic with Payne's Gray fluid acrylic and a copious amount of airbrush medium. And I use the airbrush medium because it keeps the integrity of the pigment in the color. Whereas if I used that much water in the jar, it would really just thin out the pigment and it wouldn't have the strength that this does. Now, some of you who don't know the process of glazing may be looking at this right now and going, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" Trust me on this. The glaze is going to settle into the texture, right? I'm going to go back and get rid of a lot of it using this shop towel. All I really want to do is push the glaze into the texture to make the texture come out more. All right. So just know with these glazes, you can go in and out and you can put it on and you can erase it. And you can put it on, you can wipe it down. You have complete flexibility to do what you want, but it will always get caught up in the texture, and that's exactly what I want for this project. So I went ahead and I added in a little Hansa yellow to the color mix because I felt like it needed just a little bit of lift. And I'm blending that in with the teal as well as the glaze to get an earthiness that wasn't there before. So I'm not trying to make this a big, huge color field. And you're going to see it's actually going to tone down in its own way magically. But you're also going to see as it dries and as I continue to do the glazing, you're going to see this texture pop pretty much right off the page. Now, as usual, I'm not being precious about any of this. So you may recall I hand wrote the names of the mediums I was using in pencil early on. You can't see any of that now, right? Because it no longer matters to me. Now I am in the flow and I am just using the mediums and the paints and the glazes as I see fit. Now, here I'm thinking I'm almost done, but I'm not. It definitely needs more of that darkness from the glaze to make the texture pop because I know it can do more. And I'm going out to the edges now. I don't want that really orangey look on the edges. I want to tone that down a bit. And the glaze is just doing a spectacular job with that. Look at that. I mean, this is magic. Look what is happening. If you have acrylic mediums of any type on your shelf, if you have a fluid, I would encourage you to experiment with that. If you have heavy-bodied mediums, I would encourage you to experiment with those. And if you have both, experiment with both of them at the same times. You're going to be shocked at what you can create when you start exploring these and how easy they make this. Listen, how I constructed this was in absolute real time. We're in actually less than 12 minutes now. Aside from the drying time, this is an incredibly fast way to get gorgeous art up on your wall. Now, I let it dry again. Let's take a final look. Oh, this is just so exciting to me. This looks like a deeply aged cave wall and you saw me do it right in front of you. It was just using the compounds to build out different layers of texture, then going in with the glaze to make it pop, and then adding some colors to give it some lift and undulation, and then going in finally with the glaze to make it all pop. This was so easy. Thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in learning more about acrylic mediums or really anything having to do with mixed media art, please sign up for my mailing list. You'll be invited into my free resource community and you'll have access to all sorts of things that will forever change and impact your art. This is what I would watch next.